So I'm a 20-year-old female living in a shady apartment complex in an otherwise rich suburban area for 3 years. And I have lots of stories that could fit on here. But this one is about a neighbor that I'll call Bob. A little backstory. I was 18 at the time, and my then 16-year-old sister used to babysit all the neighborhood kids. These kids considered us their friends and got to where they seemed to have a radar of when me and my sister went outside. They would come out and talk to us, and we would let them ride our skateboards and such in the parking lot. The kids were ages 8 to 13. So, one day we were outside with them and we were joined by a stranger. He stood between us and our car, towering over us. He introduced himself and asked us to sign a petition that he made up. We did, just to be friendly, and then he asked us how old we were. I thought maybe he was a fellow teenager that looked older, that he was just awkward. So, I told him that I was 18. And the very next question was if I wanted to go out with him. In front of my mom and the other kid's mom. I awkwardly declined, but he continued talking about how he thought me and my sister were in middle school. Also, he was 28. Eventually, he wandered away and he asked somebody else to sign his petition. A few days later, he knocked at her door after asking my neighbor for the address. He had a bag of what he said was chicken and wanted us to go eat it with him at the park. We declined because we both had schoolwork to do. He walked away, and he was mumbling about how antisocial everyone was. Later, we look out of our window and see him playing baseball with 2 girls. He kept physically moving their arms to different positions, even though they shrugged away from him. The next day, one of the kids runs up to me. I'll call her Maddie. She's 8. She got a new pair of Heelys and wanted help with them. I was holding her hand and guiding her along when Bob appears and says that he can help better. Maddie says no, but he insists. He pushed me aside and he reaches for Maddie, holding her tightly around the upper chest area. Her grandma was there too and flips out. He wanders away. The next day, Maddie is freaking out, saying Bob was just sitting on her porch when she left for school that morning. Her parents found out, and as they walked outside, he let himself in. And they said that he went into their kitchen to make orange chicken. We later found out another neighbor had a similar story. Another time, we were helping a family move. They have a 2-year-old son. The garages are in a triangle shape to the road, almost a roundabout. There is a flat patch of grass behind them. Well, here comes Bob to help us. He criticized the way that we packed things and didn't help until our neighbor politely asked him to leave. Well, he left the garage, but instead of leaving, he asked the 2-year-old if he wanted to play. The kid says no, and it made him mad. He picked up the kid to play and the kid slapped him. He asked the kid if he wanted to go behind the garages to play ball. The kid's mom doesn't notice, so I go with him and I guide the kid to his mom. The climax of this story is when me and my sister went on a walk with our 17-year-old friend and her other friend. Maddie found us and wanted to come along. So, we're starting out when Bob comes out. He sees our friend and he asked how old she is and how much she weighs because she's so skinny. He asked where we're going. My friend tells him that we're going for ice cream on a girls' trip. We didn't ask her to say that. He's like, "Oh man," and he stomps away. We continue our walk, but halfway through we have a weird feeling. I look behind us and Bob is running towards us. He yells at us for hiding from him, while also telling Maddie how pretty she is. An older neighbor sees this and asks him what's going on. He tells the man that we're being mean and he needs to go write a song about us. He leaves, but we see him sitting at the park. Well, he saw us, and again comes running. We stop and he asks which one of us is over 18. Maddie's dad is here at this point and tells him that we aren't interested in him. He explodes, telling her dad to screw himself, and he's so rude and he calls me names. Maddie's crying and the neighbor who saw us before came to check on us, since he saw Bob running. Bob goes inside, muttering to himself. For weeks we don't see him. A single dad and his 5-year-old daughter move in, and we are introducing ourselves to them. My mom kind of tips him off that there's someone in the building who's a little off, especially around Maddie. The dad says that he's seen someone like that giving kids candy at the pool when the kids looked uncomfortable. Well, here comes Bob, as if on cue. He immediately tells the girl in front of her dad that she looks like a movie star and that she's so pretty. He asks to play with her, but the dad says no when they go inside. Turns out they're next door neighbors. We still didn't see him much, but other neighbors were telling us stories about him. There's a woman who's alone most of the day with her 2 kids under 5, who told us that he watches her when she goes to and from her car. Also, Maddie's parents continue to see him watching her. And then one day we're again babysitting, and here he comes. Only this time he's swinging nunchucks. Maddie screams and hides in her car. Bob strolls over with his nunchucks and starts talking to all of us casual. And then his head cranes to look into the car, and he says, "Where's Maddie?" We had told him that she wasn't there, and he walked away. By then, most of the kids were afraid to go outside when they saw him. He had a habit of wandering around the complex. We could tell by his height and lanky gait. A few times we had seen Bob with his dad. Those times, neither even glanced at us. Then one day, he just stopped showing up. We had seen his dad and brother come in and out all the time, but never him. We only saw him again a year later, and it was only for one day near Christmas, and then he disappeared again. So, I don't know what happened to him. But it was just one of our weird experiences with neighbors in the 3 years living there. For the next 2 stories, I'll post other occurrences that happened in the same apartment complex. So, this happened almost a year ago now, when I still lived in my apartment complex, which was in a nice area but seemed to attract the weirdest people. Just a little backstory. There is a neighbor in the building across from mine, an older single woman named Susan. When me and my sister first moved in, we would hang out near her building with a former friend. She's worthy of her own story, to be honest, and so we developed a rapport with Susan. We would bring her tea when she was sick and we would walk her dog. I was next door neighbors with a different woman called Laura. Laura is a mother of 2 young kids, and she and her boyfriend like to sit on their balcony overlooking the parking lot and smoke into the late hours of the night. Well, one day Laura was doing this at around 2 a.m. Laura texts my mom that there's been an incident. My mom tells me and my sister, and we tend to stay up pretty late, and we went to her balcony to see what was up. In the parking lot, we see a car that's halfway backed into another, a parked car, but almost at a side angle. Laura says the person who was in the car ran away as soon as they hit the other car. The car, however, remained, still running too. So, we're wondering what the heck that was all about. My mom goes downstairs to the car to check for damage, when she sees a figure standing at Susan's building. It was a man that we had never seen before, and he was just standing there. Turns out, the owner of the sideways car freaked out because he saw us looking, and claims literally, someone stole it and moved it out of the way so they could have my parking spot. The next morning, my mom texts Susan about the incident, as the sideways car was kind of blocking hers. She says that she knows what happened and has us come outside so she could tell us. She's standing with the man from the parking lot the night before. He introduces himself as Eric, and then he's seeing Susan. When we start talking, it turns out he didn't actually know what had happened. He only saw someone running from the car, but that story's irrelevant now. Anyway, we get to talking, and apparently Susan had told him about our family and that I'm studying to be a therapist. I confirm it and he just lights up. He goes on and on about all the similar work that he's done and thanks me for my service. He starts giving me names of places that I can go for shadowing hours and resources for getting a job. Finally, he tells me to use his name when applying for jobs in the future, and he could give me a job at the psych center he apparently helped found, which I looked up and could not cooperate. He was very insistent that I use his name. And next, he talks to my sister. Susan had told him that she likes movies, So he told her that he had a small speaking role in one of those teen book-to-film adaptations that we used to obsess over. So, of course, when we go home we look up his name that he gave me along with the movie title. Nowhere is he pictured in the film or given any sort of credit for it. So we dropped the movie title and just looked up his name. It wasn't a movie that we found. Nope. Apparently he had been infamous in our town for years as someone known as the Child Biter. He had earned the name by biting an 8-year-old girl who was playing with his daughter. A few years later, he bites another girl and apparently stalked her family in a public parking lot after. Another few years pass and he has a third victim. We're freaking out and text Laura, who's kind of our gossip buddy. She has 2 young kids, so she's furious that this guy with actual criminal records was allowed to move in, though he wasn't put on the lease. We were concerned too because a lot of kids lived in ours and Susan's building. The question came up of whether to tell Susan. We debated, but decided it was the best thing. My mom sends Susan a long text about how he discovered what he did. 5 minutes later, she calls us. She tells us not to believe the news articles, and the court records, and the fact that he pled guilty because he was politically framed by one of the girl's fathers who was running for some small office or something. My mom covers for me and my sister by saying that we looked up his name and the movie in front of Laura. Susan demands to know why Laura's concerned. My mom tells her to talk to Laura herself, so she does. She knocks on Laura's door and asks what her concerns are. Laura barely gets one sentence out about how there are kids everywhere, and that she's trying to be a good parent before Susan turns around and just leaves, just like that. There are a few families whose kids I babysit who pretty much let their kids wander the complex all day, with no supervision. Unless I'm outside, then it's free babysitting apparently. We tell some of them and they are enraged. For 2 days, there's not a single kid outside. After that, I guess the parents decided actually looking after their kids was too much work, and gradually let them play outside again alone. A few days later, an 8-year-old girl that we babysit, Maddie. This poor girl has the worst history of both getting the attention of creepy men. I think they pick up on her crappy home life. And her friend ran up to us to tell us about a nice guy at the pool who gave them M&Ms. A few minutes later, Eric strolls up with his bathing suit and Maddie tells us it was him. We avoid eye contact, but he slows when he passes us. We warn Maddie and her friend in 8-year-old terms to stay away from him. Another time, we're visiting a friend who lives in his building. He emerges right as we enter the hallway. He puts on a huge grin and starts making small talk. We awkwardly excuse ourselves and go to the friend's house. We go inside and our friend keeps looking out the window. There's Eric standing by his car just staring through the window. Part of our babysitting includes picking Maddie up from the bus randomly in the week when asked. The bus stop is right next to the pool. And who do we see in a lounge chair with sunglasses not doing a thing every single day at bus time? Eric. Now we're all kind of upset with this dude. We contact the property manager who says she can't do anything because he's not registered as living there. If he stays longer than 2 weeks though, he'll be charged for not being on it. Well, the 2 weeks ended, and then we never saw him again. I'm still stumped as to why the heck he told me to use his name as a reference, when a simple search of his name shows all of his history. Again, I lived in a nice area in a small suburban town. No idea what it was about those apartments that attracted the weirdos and criminals. Maybe it's some unspoken agreement for them to all gather there that we didn't know about. For the next story, I'll post the one of our friend that claimed she was a witch and tried to murder her parents. But until then, creepy man who bites children, let's not meet again. These events happened over several months in 2016, when me and my sister, then 16 and 14, first moved into our most recent apartment complex with our mother. We now call it the apartment complex from hell because there were many incidents like this. Admittedly, we were still into the hoverboard craze then and would ride them around. This is how we met Savannah. She was our age and lived in our building. She asked to hang out, and we were happy to hopefully make new friends, so we said yes. We hung outside the complex at a little park area. It got dark and we started to make up ghost stories. It turns out, she liked the creepy paranormal stuff like we did. As we were walking home, the light in one of the apartment hallways flickered, and I joked and said that it was a spirit trying to communicate with us. Savannah made up a flash once for yes, twice for no system to communicate with the spirit, and we messed around a bit. We thought it was just harmless fun. The next day, she runs over to us excited. She informs us that the spirit we had met last night told her its name was Kieran and that it meant light, so it made all perfect sense now. We asked her how she knew and she said she went back later that night alone to talk to it. This was the first time it occurred to us that she might have really believed in this kind of stuff. Our aunt had given us an old Ouija board as a joke the year before, and we thought Savannah might like it. Savannah lit up and said that she wanted to try and talk to Kieran. So we huddled in the hallway connecting the apartments and put our hands on the board. We kept getting random letters that didn't make sense, but soon Savannah's questions were directed to Kieran. We felt her moving the planchette and called her out, but she got mad and said that she would prove it. She took her hand off the planchette and it no longer moved. She just huffed and insisted that it wasn't her. Over the next few weeks, we did mostly normal stuff with her, but she kept talking about the ghosts and Ouija boards until we broke down and we played it again. This time, we were introduced to a new ghost, Evan. We knew it was Savannah moving the planchette, but we were curious about the story that she was making, so we let her follow through. Evan was a ghost, or a demon rather, about our age who wanted freedom from a greater demon controlling him. The greater demon's name? Kieran. Savannah's parents called her inside and conveniently, Evan had to go too. He told us that he would protect us against Kieran, especially Savannah. Savannah commented on how cute that was for him to offer. A few days go by normally, but then Savannah's back to tell us that she has a boyfriend. We're happy for her until she tells us that his name is Evan. We're wondering what the heck she's talking about, and she explains that while sleeping over at another friend's house, something had tugged off her shirts while she had slept. She had woken up and heard Evan's voice, and then he had visited her in the dreams and asked to date her or something like that. She had said yes. Of course, we know she made up Evan, so we were kind of like, what is wrong with you? And we don't want to talk about this demon stuff anymore. Now Savannah was extremely possessive over her friends. When she would see us with someone else, she would text us nonstop about why we hadn't invited her. We tried to keep our distance, but she lived on the ground floor and literally watched out her window waiting for us to come outside. She would latch onto us. We didn't know much about her home life, but she always seemed troubled. She had scars on her wrists and talked about running away from home. Her parents seemed alright, if rather strict and religious. We still hung out with her because we were worried, but were starting to feel weird about it. Worse, she had randomly show up holding her hand out, saying Evan was holding her hand. She would look at random things and laugh when no one was talking because Evan had told her a joke. Once, she made us feel her cheek where it was supposedly warm from Evan kissing her. It wasn't warm. One day my sister and I were bored from her talking to Evan on the Ouija board. She was still controlling the whole thing and wanted some fun. I texted my mom to call my phone from a blocked number and play creepy sounds. Looking back, this was one of the dumbest things that I did, but at the time, it was just for fun. My mom made the call, then I put it on speaker. Savannah is living for it, especially when my mom played a track from a scary movie about a ghost. My mom took it a step further and threw a banana off our third-story balcony for us to see. Savannah said it was a sign that Kieran was winning. We had no idea of the fire this would light in her. We were about to tell her that it was a prank, but again, her mom called her inside. She found us again the next day and I came clean about the prank. She laughed and said that there is no way that we could have done that. I said no, my mom literally did all of it. Well, Savannah had told her friend about it, who had told her that yellow objects, like the banana, were a sign of the devil, and seeing them meant the devil was hunting you. This was all she talked about for a while, but since nothing else happened, she gradually forgot. Things went back to normal for a while, until Autumn moved in. Autumn and Savannah connected instantly because of their history with depression. Autumn was a few years younger than us, but had a heck of a lot more of a past. This included significant time spent in psychiatric facilities and violence towards her classmates and family. Autumn claimed that she heard demons talk to her at night, and just like that, the ghost stuff had started again. Savannah felt threatened by Autumn and felt the need to one-up her with ghost stuff. She told her Evan was her ghost brother that looked out for her. I was like, hold on, you claim that he was your boyfriend. She giggled and said, that's gross, he's my brother. Her story had completely switched. Now she was dating another demon named Jacob, and they were engaged. She even showed us a ring to prove it. The next week or so was literally like a match between them to see who was the darkest and most involved in the spiritual world or whatever. They would compare scars on their wrists and brag about cutting themselves and doing things like sneaking out in the night. In a move to one-up Autumn, Savannah drew a giant pentagram in the parking lot with chalk. Her parents found out and she backed out and blamed it on Autumn. The next freaking day, people come to repave the parking lot. The pentagram is now buried under it forever, literally. Savannah moved on to saying her friend had found Jacob's body and was going to put his spirit back inside it. Savannah continued to take advice from this friend, who fueled everything she did. Savannah now said the friend was teaching her witchcraft. We mostly avoided her at this point, but she would ask us to do things like make holy water with her and try and summon her a familiar. From that point, she insisted she was a fire witch and walked around wearing all black with Halloween-like makeup on her face. She and Autumn frequently snuck out together, and occasionally we'd see cop cars at her house. My sister and I were avoiding them both, but now we'd get fiery texts from both of them if we hung out with other people, especially our guy friends. Once, they saw us get home and stood in the parking lot pretending to be possessed. Autumn also cut all of her hair and claimed to have tried to kill her teacher. My sister and I knew that was bullcrap, or at least we hoped. But Savannah took it so seriously. She would go around telling neighbors of terrible crimes she committed or wanted to commit. She even told us that when she had first seen us outside with hoverboards, that she had wished for them to blow up. One day, we again saw the police come to her door, and the officers had jackets that said they were from the Juvenile Justice Department. Her mom pulled me and my sister and our mom aside to explain what was going on. Apparently, 2 years before, they had discovered Savannah talking with a man online. Her messages to him were hiring him to come literally kill her parents, after making threats of killing them a few days before. We were able to confirm the story after pet sitting for them and finding court papers about it. We had known she was on probation, but she would always tell us different stories as to why. Savannah continued to beg us to hang out with her after that, even inviting herself to spend the night. We avoided her at all costs, but she would follow us everywhere. It kind of died down when Autumn moved out, and Savannah moved in with her family shortly after. Since then, she started doing service hours at a horse stables and graduated high school. I really hope she's gotten happier and more stable. Autumn messaged my sister a few months ago, asking to call her mom to confirm that she was with us. She wasn't. And we later saw her with a 19-year-old dude. She's 14. Me and my sister and my mom have moved as well. There were too many incidents in those apartments. Our new place is so quiet and peaceful. But to Savannah and Autumn, let's never meet again.